My name is Garbage Grace, and welcome to the landfill that is my channel, you little trash possums. So, today I thought I would talk about my favorite fantasy series ever, probably my favorite series ever, second to Twilight, and also review the latest book that was released in the series. So the series that I'm talking about is the Memory of Babel Quartet by Christell Dabos. So it's originally a French YA fantasy series. YA, I would give it like, it's borderline YA adult, I would say, for fantasy. It's originally a French series, and then it's been translated to English by Hildegard Surly. Unsure if that's how it is. So the first book in the series is A Winter's Promise. And then you have The Missing of Claire de Lune. And then the latest book that was released on September 8th, 2020 was The Memory of Babel. All these books, like each one just, I just can't give them enough praise. I've made some of my friends read them. They love them. So I'm going to get into talking about why they're so great. They probably have some of the best and most creative world building of a fantasy series that I've honestly ever read. A lot of fantasy series are just like, hey, we're going to set our book in Middle Ages Europe, and just call it something different and have like a really basic magic system, and that's what we're gonna do, and I'm over it. Stop. Be more creative. Do something different. Okay. Before I get started on the premise, I do just want to highlight, like, look how pretty these are, especially all together. These are like too many books for me to hold up. Like, don't you just like want this sitting? I know this is not a cat. Don't you just want this sitting on your shelves at all time? Don't you just want this as like a wallpaper on your walls? I do. They're just beautiful. Oh, these books are beautiful. I got this last book from Bookshop. So don't buy it from Amazon. Amazon sucks. Buy it from Bookshop or an independent bookstore. So the premise of the series is that thousands of years ago, there was a great war that caused this event called a rupture. And what happened was Earth was split into these giant floating islands. And there's 20 major, the islands are called arcs. So there's 20 major arcs that just like float in a globe. And like there's no oceans. There's just like a void in between these arcs. And each arc has a god-like deity, more of your like Greek goddess type of gods, not like your Christian god, who has control over the arc. Maybe not like control over the arc, but rules the arc. And each of the family, they're called family spirits, and each of the family spirits have a specific set of like powers. They're called like mistress of or master of. So one of them is like mistress of objects, master of spirit, masters of senses, stuff like that. And then all of the descendants of the family spirits, the family spirits are immortal, their descendants are mortal, have some sort of their family spirits' powers. A Winter's Promise, and the whole series, main character is Ophelia, who is a citizen of the Ark of Anima, which has the family spirit Artemis, and everyone in Anima has some sort of control over objects, and they're all like descendants of Artemis as some sort. And so their like powers over objects will like bring objects to life, not like life, but they'll like objects are always moving around, stuff like that. Ophelia has kind of a rarer set of powers within the Anima, where she has two. she's a reader, so whenever she touches an object, she can read its entire history and some of the histories of everyone that like had touched and used the object. And she's also a mirror visitor, so she can travel through mirrors over a short distance, which is very unusual in the world and makes her kind of special. So in A Winter's Promise, she gets, in the beginning of it, she gets engaged to this guy called Thorn, against her will, and is sent to the ark called the Pole. And the Pole gives you, it's like very big Russian monarchy, aristocracy vibes. If you've seen the show The Great, it reminds me of that, just if the whole thing was just like constantly buried under snow. And their family spirit is called like Farouk. I think I'm pronouncing that right. And he is the master of spirits. And so a lot of his descendants have like more mind things. Like there's a group that are the illusionists, so almost the entire arc is under all these illusions to make it not seem like a frozen tundra. And like, so there's things like that, which really cool, really trippy. And so the Pole is very different than her home arc of Anima. Anima's very like everyone gets along, kumbaya, where the Pole has a lot of like there's a lot of deception, secret keeping, just kind of like political tension, but not boring political tension. And throughout the series, Ophelia is basically trying to uncover the mysteries of the family spirits and what happened that caused the rupture, because it's very secretive, and the family spirits also have very like bad memories for a reason that you later find out down the line. I would say the plot of A Winter's Promise is a little slow, just because since it is such a heavy world building world, Christell Dabos does really have to dig into like setting up the world and everything, so the plot gets put on the side. I'm not upset at it at all, because she created something that was so inventive and so well done that I'm Gucci with it. But The Missing of Claire de Lune and The Memory of Babel have a lot more plot driven focus, since she did spend so much time in A Winter's Promise settling all of her world building down. So if like that is something you do sometimes need to like get through with A Winter's Promise, not to say that there isn't like plot, it just isn't as big and as like the rest of the story. The other thing I do love about this series is the characters, the character development. She did a really interesting thing, which I haven't really heard anyone point out, where she took these common tropes of characters and really delved into them and made them deeper to make these common tropes into a full formed, rounded character that really makes sense and makes these tropes into something unique. So for example, Ophelia, her characteristics, she's very shy, reserved. She kind of just like likes to be in the background. And like she very much does not want anything that's happening to her. She just wants to like live in her little museum and take care of all of her objects. No, she gets sent off to the pole and has to deal with like assassins, things that it's just like not in her wheelhouse. And so the series kind of follows her really pushing herself to go do those things, even though it is against her nature. And I think in other series, the main character does have this like, I'm just a shy girl, I didn't like, this wasn't what I wanted, but like look at me become brave and learn how to fight and like be badass. There's nothing wrong with those, it just does have those, there's a word for it, it's like, oh, they turn out being blank slate characters instead of fully developed characters. And I want a fully developed character. I am 22-year-old lady. I'm not Jenna Marbles, I can't do that. But I'm 22. I want to get to know the characters and everything. And so she really delves into that. And all of her actions don't seem like they're a blank slate. Ophelia feels fully developed in who she is. And the actions she chooses always seem connected to who she is, which I just think is really special. And then Thorn is also the same way. He's kind of a very like brooding, like giant man person. You know how it is. You've seen those characters. a million times. And a lot of times they're just like, I'm broody. That's my personality trait. And she actually gets into like the reasons why and really delves into all of it and develops him fully as a person. They were engaged, so really early on. But it's a very enemies to friends to lovers. It's the slowest burn I've ever read. And I normally hate like slow burn romances, but 3 books of a slow burn romance is actually worth it. I'm here for it, especially because all their issues aren't dumb issues. One of the things that's really common is like kind of missteps in communications, and I feel like there's this like a trope that goes along in most books about miscommunications, but the series turns its head on its wheels, where the miscommunications really do make sense for these 2 characters. Just because they're both very shy, they're very reserved, and they're definitely not peoples. So they really don't have that aspect to them, and so communicating with each other. Thorn is very protective and very secretive. He very much believes it is his role to do it all, and he has to do it all by himself. While Ophelia, because she got that energy from him, and since they were originally kind of these enemies, she just felt like she could never trust him and go to him and tell him, and so getting over that obstacle made sense. And it wasn't a dumb miscommunication like you see in so many books. They're like, hey, we spent the whole 3/4 of the books just getting into these characters and having them fall in love, but it's almost gonna be ruined by a text message sent to the wrong person. You know what I mean. Every single rom-com, you've seen it. It's there. This isn't a rom-com, but it has a romance subplot. And in a lot of YA fantasy, the romance subplots have them. So, Christell Dabos, she just really went above and beyond and taking tropes and turning them into something that is new and unique. So, I love that for her. So, getting into the Memory of Babel review specifically, I read this in 6 hours, and she's thick. This is not a thin. She shouldn't have been a quick read. I had other things to be doing during my time. Did this instead. This takes place 2.5 years after the events of the missing of Claire de Lune. Basically, Ophelia ends up back at her home arc, and Thorn is gone. No one knows where he went. He disappeared. And because of that, Ophelia's on her own. She's very much trapped on her own arc in what she's realizing is an oppressive system. And every arc has this oppressive system running it because of what is revealed in the second book. Her only goal is to find Thorn because she thinks together they can solve the mysteries that were revealed. So she ends up finding a way to escape and going to the Ark of Babel, which is, the family spirits are Helen and Pollux. And so she goes to that. Helen and Pollux are twins, but there's only Pollux's descendants because Helen is infertile. I do have a little, when you just get an inkling, a thought about that. There's a character that makes me think that Helen did have a child in this book. If you read this book, let me know if you think so too. Hint, the guy's name is Ambrose, the character. This is not confirmed, but I have a suspicion that Ambrose is Helen's child, just from similar characteristics. That is not a spoiler because I feel it in my heart. So she goes, this is the first time she's truly on her own in either of the 2 books, and so she is trying to find Thorn because she has a suspicion that he is there, and to do that she joins a giant library where she assigns herself up as an apprentice and goes through a grueling task. And a lot of the book is focused on her journeys as an apprentice, which at points I thought, okay, but how does this relate to the main point? But I do like the system it set up and the plot. I think this, I do think this had the best like plot, but this was like a close second of the plot setup. And so she goes through that and tries to find Thorn and also find the answers of the family spirits and everything like that. But she has to be very secretive because people are out to get her. So I loved what she did with Ophelia on her own. Ophelia on her own really, as she'd never really been on her own, and she always had support of others, so she really just had to go get it. And she also had to like assume this other identity called Eulalia. Don't know if that's how I'm supposed to pronounce it. So she takes on this identity of Eulalia, and at points she gets the book shows her getting lost in the character and like her persona and questioning like, oh, I've spent so long being this other person. Am I really Ophelia anymore? Is anything that happened to me even like real? Which, damn, Christell, you got into it. So I thought the plot was really amazing. The payoff of a slow burn romance in this book. Oh my gosh. It just like slapped. That end, the ending. There was another cliffhanger ending that also shook me in a different way than like the satisfaction of seeing our two loves really dealing with their communication issues and talking it out. So that was really a good payoff for the end, and she discovers a lot more, and I think she really comes into herself and becomes such more of a stronger, independent person and believes so much more in herself. While in the other two books, she was often like afraid to go out and do things just because she really had I don't want to say low self-confidence or like low self-esteem. She deeply knew who she was, and she's always deeply known who she was. I think she was always like, oh, I'm like shy. I want to be reserved. I want to be shy. And I think she held those two thoughts in contradiction, and she realized she can kind of go and do both. She is the main character of the story.
You have to start romanticizing your life. You have to start thinking of yourself as the main character.
Anyways, yeah, I love this book. It's great. It slaps. The whole series slaps. I don't know when the fourth book is getting released. I finished this on January 1st of 2020, read the whole thing in like 5 hours, and then I went into like I needed to know. This book had already been released in French, and after I finished this book, I honestly considered learning French so I could read this before the English translation came out, but the fourth book I don't even think is out in French yet. So should I just become fluent in French so I can read my favorite fantasy series before it comes out in English? I just don't know, but I'm excited for all the answers to be revealed, and I'm also sad. I don't know. I am happy. I was worried about this book just because a lot of the people who'd read it in French said it was less exciting, less good. I don't know. They said it wasn't worth it compared to the other books. Those people were liars. The French, they lied to me. This book was amazing. Anyways, thank you for watching. Thank you for showing up on my channel. Like, comment, subscribe. Tell me if you've read this book. Tell me if you want to read this book. Tell me if any fantasy series you think I should read, because I love procrastinating all my work I have to do to read books that I have no obligation to read. Anyways, thanks for watching. Have a good day, my little trash possums.